Amateur.
Theo, you have set up a number of successful internet-based businesses over the last 5 years. You began working from your university dorm?
Yeah, I was just messing about really at first.
It was for fun?
Sure, yeah, exactly. I didn't know 5 years ago that I'd be here today. The thought never crossed my mind.
Would you still describe yourself as an amateur?
Not in the negative sense, obviously, but in the sense that I love what I do, then yeah.
But you do make money.
I can't complain.
Why do you think it's the net that has created so many successful amateurs?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure I agree with you that it has created all the successful amateurs. I mean, there are lots of other examples of people who love what they do and make money out of it. I'm thinking of someone like Michael Eavis, for example, the guy who runs the Glastonbury Festival.
Yeah.
I don't know how much money he makes from what he does, but that's not the important thing. Most of the year he's a farmer, but each year he runs this enormous music festival on the site of his farm. Actually, he doesn't even do it every year. Sometimes he just thinks, no, can't be bothered this year. You know, I think that's genius. Love that attitude. He's only one example, but there are lots of others. People who run record labels or have restaurants or make cheese.
Do you think it's important to love what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. There has to be passion for the product.
So it's the product that's important?
Again, yeah. Get the product right and everything else is simple. The marketing will look after itself. This is why the net has produced so many successful amateurs. The marketing is done by word of mouth, so to speak. People just tell each other about a site that's cool, especially through networking sites like MySpace and Facebook.
Marketing isn't important?
Well, of course it is. I'm sure there are marketing amateurs out there too, people who love what they do. But I firmly believe that you can't market a poor product. That's essential.
Your father was a successful businessman too, and you studied at Cambridge.
Mm-hmm.
Does having such a background help?
I'm from a wealthy family, yeah. I've never denied it. That helps, obviously. It's given me time. Time, above all, is the most important thing. Time to experiment and make mistakes, and not have to worry too much. But that's not a key thing in the rise of the amateur.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I am. Love, not money. That's my motto.
Thanks.
When did you begin learning English?
I studied medicine in the Netherlands for 8.5 years, and I started learning English in middle school with German and French. In my work, I travel all over the world. Well, now I'm in China only for a few weeks, but I have traveled with the Red Cross to most countries in the world.
What is the Dutch approach to teaching English in medical school?
When I was at university, all of our teaching was in Dutch, but all the textbooks were in English. At the time, there was a movement going on in Holland to make all the teaching in English. I followed this movement very strongly because in my profession, it's important to communicate in English. Most of the research done in the world is in English too, so I need to be able to understand it, to evolve.
What was your initial reaction to dealing with medical journals in English?
Oh, it was difficult to read all the time in English, and I certainly had a lot to do. I still do today. I think it was difficult also because I didn't know the terms in Dutch either. I was learning the profession. Although because of the volume of reading I had to do, I soon improved my reading skills. I had to find information quickly, but be sure not to miss anything important. This helps me now when I have to do research on the internet and separate relevant from irrelevant documents.
And what do you do when confronted with a document that you find difficult to understand?
Oh, I've been a doctor for 25 years and a surgeon for 10 years, so I very rarely have problems with medical documents.
Yeah.
However, when I have to read political documents about the country I'm in, which is often the case as I travel to many war zones, I try to understand the gist. So, to do this, I look quickly over the articles and take a few notes as I read.
Do you sometimes wish you could read English better for your work, or is your level sufficient to get by?
I'm never really happy with my level, but it's enough for my work. I think I have to accept it. I have application forms to read and fill out in English, and these are a little more complicated as they don't use medical terms.
How do you actively improve your English?
Oh,
If you don't, is there a reason? Is your current level sufficient for your professional needs?
at the moment, I'm working a lot with Chinese and French people, so I'm reading a lot in French. But soon I'm going to Scotland, and there I will read more in English. I find the more I read in a foreign language, the easier it becomes, because you start recognizing more words. Basically, I can manage in English, but I never stop reading, so I'm always learning.
Art and Business. Art and Business is an organisation that develops creative partnerships between business and the arts. Peter Jones is going to talk about the company's ideas and tell us about some of their success stories. Peter, maybe you could begin by telling our listeners why Art and Business was created.
Well, in the 21st century, productivity is no longer a matter of machines. The success of a company depends on its people and on the creativity of its people. It makes sense that the way to increase productivity is to stimulate creativity.
And what better way to stimulate creativity than through reading books?
Exactly. Every reader knows that a good book can stimulate the imagination and the intellect, get you thinking along lines you might not have thought of before, open up new worlds.
So, have you had any help in setting up the project?
Yes. The London Libraries Agency and an organisation called the Reading Partnership work with us on this project. We're trying to use the power of the written word to motivate staff in the workplace. In a recent survey, 700 business leaders were asked which book had inspired them and had a positive influence on their career. They were able to choose any kind of book, any kind at all. Only about 40% chose a business book. Most people chose a work of fiction, a novel, a play, or even poetry.
How can reading help somebody to become a more creative worker?
Successful managers need to be well-rounded people. They need active imaginations. When they interpret fictional scenarios, they are using their creativity. Readers combine imaginative skills with critical and analytical skills.
Are we talking about the right and left sides of the brain?
Yes. Our logical left side of the brain interprets the language of a book. The creative right side looks at the forms of expression. The left side analyses the plot, while the right side is more interested in the relationships between characters, the emotional aspects.
How does this transfer to the world of business?
Creative ideas make businesses more competitive. Shared reading experiences improve communication and morale at work.
Can you give listeners some examples of how this scheme has been brought successfully into the workplace?
Employees at W.H. Smith have stuck poems and quotations above their desks for inspiration.
Well, W.H. Smith deals in books. What about other examples?
The telecommunications company Orange set up a project called Talk Books at Work. They discovered that encouraging employees to read helped them to develop their linguistic and interpersonal skills. Marks & Spencer has set up reading groups at work. The groups cut across the usual hierarchies, and working relationships have improved greatly.
We're here at the Interceltique Festival in Brittany, France, and I'm talking to two as yet little-known pipers, Iria Salgado from Galicia.
Hello.
And from Ireland, Ronan Doherty.
Hi.
So, how did you get started?
There's been music in my family for as long as I can remember. I learnt the tin whistle when I was 6, and then, after a year, my father bought me my first set of pipes. But it was an uncle who gave me lessons.
I was 5 when I started. I learned by ear from my father, imitating him like it's always been done. When I was 10, he started putting me in for competitions.
Who have been your musical influences?
Well, Miladoiro, who started it all, and Carlos Núñez, who really put Galician music on the map. But my greatest inspiration has got to be players like Susana Saivarne and Cristina Pato, for showing that women can be out there just as much as the men.
Ronan?
All the obvious names, really. Paddy Keenan from the Bothy Band, Liam O'Flynn, Davy Spillane, who I met recently, though I didn't get to play with him.
What sort of places do you play?
Well, in Dublin, you're spoilt for choice these days. And I have family out in Westport, County Mayo. I'm always there in the holidays, so I often go along and sit in on sessions at Malloy's.
Iria, I know you've started writing your own stuff. How would you categorise your music?
It's always based on the traditional repertoire, but I try to incorporate other Celtic influences as well. And the people I play with are no longer just from my corner of Europe. We have Irish, Cuban and Brazilian guys that come into the group. And so that gets reflected in the music I write.
Ronan, what has been your best gig so far?
Performing at the International Bagpipe Festival in Strachanice last year. The crack was amazing. And the chance to get together with guys from other traditions. Czechs, Breton pipers, Bulgarians. Some incredible sounds, really.
Iria, what advice would you give to other women wanting to take up the pipes?
Now is definitely the time. There's a whole new generation coming through. Even though women pipers are still a minority, there's much more acceptance than there was. Nearly half the bagpipe students in Galicia now are girls.
Where can we hear you playing next? Have you got many gigs lined up?
I'm doing a series of dates with the band in the west of Ireland and then going over to Holland and Germany next March.
I've got a few concerts in Galicia next month, and then I'll be in Zamora in Spain for a week.
Great. Thanks very much. And to play us out, you're going to do a traditional muñeira, followed by a reel.
So why exactly does your job have a reputation for being stressful?
Stress is generally driven by the feeling of being out of control of a situation and the feeling of a situation controlling you. Trading financial markets combines both these scenarios. Your financial position can change in a matter of seconds. And what changes that position is generally a situation beyond your control as a trader. It is possible to lose in seconds what may have taken you a year to make. It's the feeling of uncertainty, being out of control, that causes the stress.
How do you relax in the evening?
I very rarely do anything work-related, so it's easy to escape the markets. I generally go to the gym or go for a run, especially if I've had a bad day. I always cook a meal rather than have a takeaway to do something my brain would regard as creative. I find it quite therapeutic. More often than not, I will watch some TV before going to bed, as I find it helps me to wind down. If I go to bed straight after work, it's harder to sleep.
What do you do to beat stress at the weekend?
I like to be busy and active. I like the feeling of having achieved something over the weekend and it being productive. I definitely don't like wasting days. Most weekends are a mixture of household jobs like fixing something, shopping or gardening, and socialising with friends. I also go to watch Arsenal at least once a week.
Do you think what you do to relax is an effective way to beat stress?
I don't think there is a specific rule about how to beat stress. I generally find that what I do is effective for me.
Would you consider changing your job because of the high stress factor?
I have considered leaving my job due to stress-related factors. I do, however, think that an element of stress is a good thing, and if used the right way, can actually be a positive thing. It can lead to a change in direction, success, and stimulate you to do something new.
What do you enjoy about the stressful aspects of your job?
Well, having said all that, I do actually enjoy an element of uncertainty. It keeps you on your toes. I enjoy a mental challenge. Trading triggers a very wide range of emotions second by second. How you deal with and manage those emotions dictates short, medium and long-term trading performance and success.
Do you become less stressed the longer you do the job, or does it become more stressful as you go on?
I would say it remains constant. The source and the nature of the stress changes, and how you deal with it changes due to experience, but it's always there.
The BEC Exam.
Hey, didn't you have your exam yesterday?
Yes, I did.
So, what was it like? It was a BEC exam, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was the BEC Vantage.
What does that mean?
Well, it's the middle one. There are 3 BEC exams, the preliminary, the Vantage and the higher.
So what level is that compared to FCE, for example?
Well, it's like the FCE. It's an upper intermediate level.
Ah. So what did you have to do? Was there a speaking test? Were you nervous?
Hang on! One question at a time.
Oh, sorry.
There are 4 exams: reading, writing, listening and speaking.
And how are they marked? I mean, do you have to pass all of the papers in order to pass the exam, or do they work out an average score?
Each paper is worth 25% of the total mark. So if you don't do too well in one paper, you can make up the marks on another paper.
How long did the exam last?
The reading paper was the longest. That was an hour. Then the writing lasted 45 minutes and the listening was 40 minutes.
What about the speaking?
That was 14 minutes, but it felt like 5. The time flew.
Tell me about the speaking exam. Were you nervous?
At first, yes. But my partner was much more nervous, so I ended up calming him down.
What do you mean, your partner?
Oh, you do it in 2s. There are 2 candidates and 2 examiners too. Well, one examiner speaks to you, the other one just sits and makes notes.
What did you have to talk about?
Well, there are 3 sections. First of all, they asked us a few questions about ourselves, our personal life, and then about work-related things.
Oh, no.
No, that was fine. They didn't ask anything difficult. The next part is harder because you have to do a sort of mini presentation.
About what?
Well, they give you a few things to choose from and a minute to prepare.
A minute?
Yeah.
And how long is the presentation?
That's about a minute too. It was okay, actually. I spoke about what is important when you're selecting applicants for a job. That was quite easy for me. In the last section, you have to discuss something with your partner.
What?
Well, we were fairly lucky there too, I think. We had to imagine we were attending a trade fair in a foreign country. So we had to discuss travel plans and accommodation, stuff like that.
All very business-orientated then.
Oh, yeah. That's the whole point. The BEC exams are 100% geared towards people working in businesses. Everything you do is relevant. It makes it more useful.
And something good to put in your file. We'll include it in your job appraisal. We've got our meeting on Friday, so remind me then.
Biotechnology.
So why are you so against genetically modified food then? I think you've been taken in by all the bad press.
No, that's not true. I've read up on the subject and I think there are just too many risks.
The GM foods that you get are probably safer than non-GM foods.
Don't be daft. Where have you got that from?
Well, there are tighter controls for GM food. There are controls in each country and then at a European level as well. If they pass through all of those controls before they reach the shops, they must be okay.
I just don't like the idea of having my food altered. What's wrong with the food we've always had?
We have to move with the times. The possibilities for GM food are endless.
What, redder tomatoes or bigger strawberries?
Yes, for one thing. But what about vegetables with a higher vitamin content? Or bananas with vaccines built into them?
What?
It's true. They've developed a way to produce bananas with a hepatitis B vaccine.
Not sure what I think of that. We haven't done enough research and playing around with crops is playing havoc with the wildlife. There are whole species of birds that are in danger of becoming extinct. Larks, for example, they're rapidly decreasing in numbers and it's because of the chemicals they're using on GM foods.
They haven't proved that.
Not yet, no, but it's only a matter of time. And another thing that worries me is the power that a few food companies will have if we start to rely on GM food. They'll dominate the poor countries even more than they do today.
They'll feed them.
At a price, yes, maybe. I'm worried about the food chain too.
What do you mean?
Well, playing around with nature causes no end of damage to some plants and animals. When a species dies out or mutates, it has a knock-on effect on the whole ecosystem.
I think you're being cynical. You're not giving GM food a chance.
Not cynical, just cautious.
OK, consider this. Global warming is threatening to destroy the habitat of polar bears.
What's this got to do with genetically modified food?
Everything. We could use GM food to change the polar bear's habitat now. That way, we can prevent them from becoming extinct.
OK, I quite like that idea.
Good. You're starting to come round to my way of thinking.
No, I'm just trying to understand. I don't like being a guinea pig, and we're all being guinea pigs for the experiments they're doing on GM foods. I guess I don't like the way things seem to just be happening without much of a debate.
What do you mean? We're talking about it all the time.
Talking maybe, but nobody's listening.
Hello, Enigma Fusion Restaurant.
Oh, hello. Do you do group bookings?
Yes, we do. How can I help you?
Well, I'm not exactly sure of numbers right now, but I'd like to book a table for between 15 and 20 of us.
When is it for?
A week on Friday.
The 16th of November.
Yes, that's right.
OK. Well, usually we offer a set menu for groups up to 25 people. If you want, you can order à la carte, but it usually works out more expensive. And obviously, if everybody orders different food, then it can take us a lot longer to prepare. And particularly on a Friday, as we're usually pretty busy.
So, would you recommend the set menu?
Obviously, it's up to you. But it's a good option, and you get to try different types of food.
That's good. We have a couple of vegetarians in the group, some meat eaters, one person who needs gluten-free, and another who is allergic to peanuts. That wouldn't be a problem, would it?
That's not a problem. We cater for all dietary requirements. We offer several different menus, and you can choose which one you prefer. Our basic menu costs £25 per person. We do it for a minimum of 4 people, as with all our menus. That's menu A. Then they each go up in price depending on which one you order. Menu B is £30 per person, menu G is £35 per person, and menu J is £40 per person.
And how do the menus differ?
Well, all our set menus include a variety of food, some Asian style, some Mediterranean, some Latin American and some British food.
And can you mix all types of food in each menu?
Yes, that's right. Basically, you get a selection of starters for the whole table. For example, in menu A, you get a goat's cheese salad, onion bhajis and guacamole. With menu J, you get spare ribs, king prawns, hummus and pita bread, and a selection of salads. You get more options with the more expensive menus. Oh, also, with the cheaper menus, you get house wine. It works out at 1 bottle between 2 people. With the other menus, you have a choice of wine. With menu J, you can also have cava.
Right. What about the main courses?
You have a choice of 3 options. All menus also include a dessert and coffee.
Right, I see. Could I pop by and pick up some menus to have a look at?
Of course. Or I could email them to you, if you want, to save you the trouble.
Oh, that'd be great.
So, what's your name?
My name is Hannah Bailey. That's HANNAH BAILEY.
OK, Hannah. And your email?
That's hb0470@freemail.com. Oh, and my phone number is 01793 211 873.
All right. So would you like to make a temporary reservation?
Oh, can I do that?
Yeah. I can pencil you in for... how many people did you say?
Well, I'm not sure. Between 15 and 20.
OK, that's fine. You can confirm numbers and which menus you want a couple of days before.
OK, that's great.
And I'll send you the email with the menus right now.
OK, thanks a lot.
No problem. If there's anything else you need, you can get in touch and ask for me. My name's Eric.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Bye.
Bye.
Good afternoon and welcome to Modern Times. On today's show, we'll be talking about the Boomerang Generation. That's the new term that's being used to describe the phenomenon of young people, such as university graduates, who move back home to live with their parents. According to recent research, there are now approximately 6.8 million over 18-year-olds living with their parents in the UK. To talk about the reasons for this trend, I have with me in the studio today Helen Campbell, lecturer in economics at Thames University. Hello, Helen.
Good afternoon, David.
So, Helen, what is causing this trend of the so-called Boomerang Generation?
That's a good question. You see, there are a number of social and economic factors at play here. Firstly, as we all know, student loans have largely replaced the old university grant system in the UK. And as a result, student debt has risen steadily each year. According to the most recent figures, the level of debt rose again last year by 18.7%.
18.7%? But what does that mean in real terms?
Well, let's take the average graduate today. She's now likely to start her working life owing about £12,000 to the bank.
I see. That's certainly a lot of money for a young person.
Yes, and that's why so many young people are now moving back in with their families when they finish university or choosing to stay in the parental home while they study. The other important factor that is behind this trend is the high cost of housing nowadays. It's an extremely hard time for first-time buyers. You know, the average person now has to save for 5 years to get a deposit on a home.
How much of a deposit will they need?
According to a recent bank survey, about £24,000, and it seems the average first-time buyer is likely to be 33 years old these days.
Does this mean that young people are going to be more financially dependent on their parents for longer?
Well, it certainly looks that way. It makes sense for people to save money on rent and live with their parents for a few years at least.
The survey has found that less than half the 6.8 million who are now living with their parents are paying rent, and many of them receive weekly allowances from their parents.
Thank you, Helen. Well, it seems that in the past the trend has always been for each generation to be better off than the previous one. But it looks like this trend may not continue into the next generation. Our lines are now open to callers who want to discuss the Boomerang Generation with us. Call 0845...